Greetings, folks. So we're out here again doing a little bit more maintenance on my KLR here. The last time that I was working on my bike last weekend, I was changing the valve shims in my engine head. I forget exactly what that's called, valve cover. Last time I was out here, I was looking around my bike and I noticed a good bit of fluid right around my water pump, and it was like all over. There was a good bit in my dash plate as well. I cleaned it all out, and this is just what was left after I let it sit for the last week. But as you can see, there's a little drop right there. There's a little bit of liquid around this bolt here, and then I think, as you can see right about there, there's a larger drop, and there is this liquid right here, and that is all coolant, and it's all leaking out of this little weep hole thing right here. And so I was looking around. I didn't know if maybe it was my gasket or something like that. Wasn't too sure. So I was looking around online, and I saw that when coolant is coming out of that weep hole there, that means that your seals for your pump are pretty much shot, or at least one of them is. In this water pump here, there is a coolant seal and there's an oil seal, and the seals are on either side of this weep hole, right there. They're on either side of it. So by looking at which liquid is coming out of that weep hole, you can determine which seal is done. If there's oil coming out, you can deduce that the oil seal is gone, and if there's coolant coming out, you can deduce that the coolant seal is gone. And if you're getting a weird liquid out of there that is both oily and coolant-y, then that is not a good sign. That is a sign that both seals are gone, and you've got oil in your coolant and coolant in your oil, and that is awful. That, I'm pretty sure that would mean that you would have to take your whole engine apart and clean it out, because then you start getting like milk-shaky coolant and milk-shaky oil, and that is not what you want. So I caught it pretty early. This was the first time that I saw it leaking, and I think only my coolant seal is pretty much worn out. So as soon as you see that, you want to just bite the bullet and get that taken care of. I did not see too many water pump rebuild videos on YouTube. I saw a few, and one that was really helpful, but this is a slightly more involved process, so if you're not very confident with it, just to take it to a shop and have them do it. But it seems simple enough, at least for everything that I've done on this bike already, so I'm gonna give it a shot today. I've got a rebuild kit from Eagle Mike, and I also got a gasket. And Eagle Mike recommends doing this job by taking the whole clutch cover off, and he sent me some instructions that include that as a step. But the thing is, one of the really helpful videos that I saw just had the person taking this pump cover off and then doing everything just from doing that. And so I don't think I'm gonna need to take the clutch cover off. I did get a clutch gasket in case I do, but I'm gonna give it a shot, because that video was, I think it was from a motorcycle mechanic school, and there was like a certified Kawasaki mechanic that was like instructing the people on what to do. I'll put the link in the description. It is really helpful. But yeah, so I'm gonna try to just do that. So I think first I'm going to drain the coolant out. I don't think I'm gonna need to drain the oil, because as you can see, the level is underneath this sight glass, and the seal is right in the middle of this pump here. So I think the oil level is below the seal. So I don't think I need to take the oil out, which would be great. And since I'm not getting oil out of the weep hole, I'm not gonna need to worry about coolant that's gotten into it. Anyway, I'm going to take this drain plug out. I'm gonna drain all the coolant out of the bike. I'm going to disconnect my hoses, get some of the coolant that was in there out. And I'm going to get that all into a basin. And I don't think I'm going to need to fill it with new coolant, because I replaced the coolant about 5 months ago, 6 months ago maybe, when I put this thermobob on here. And I want to say my manual says that you should only really be replacing coolant every 2 years. So I'm gonna try to reuse the coolant that I've already got in here. I do have a bottle or two of extra in case I do just want to put some new stuff in here. I'm not going to flush the system, but if you are interested in flushing it, if you're doing this job and you do want to use some new oil and flush your system, I do have a video of that whole process on my channel too, so you can head over there. I'll put that link in the description as well. Anyway, gonna drain the coolant, gonna get this piece off, gonna get my hoses out, and then we've got some little bits in that pump, so we'll get to that when we get to it. But yeah, I think that's all the relevant information you should probably know. Yeah, I can't think of anything else, so let's get to it. Okay, I got my basin, got some gloves on. I'm just gonna, I already loosened this with a ratchet, but I'm just gonna take this plug out. And I think it's not really pouring out because my radiator cap is on, so I'm gonna go loosen that, let some air through the system, and see if that fixes it. Yep, that was it. And make sure that your basin is clean if you are going to be reusing. Why isn't there more coming out of that? I'm gonna figure this out. Alright, there we go. Funny noise there, but it was just because I loosened the cap and I didn't take it off completely. So take it off completely, and you can drain coolant. And there should be about 1.5 quarts in here. And I'm gonna disconnect these hoses, I already loosened them. And then we will take these 3 8mm bolts out. All right, we got our hoses off, pretty much all of it drained out now. And we got our 3 8mm bolts out. These two were different from this one. So the two on the left were these two that were fully threaded, and the one on the right was this one, which only has about half threads. So I'll take this off, and I might need to pry at it a little bit. Yeah, that gasket's sticky, so use both my hands and we'll get this off. Okay, I got this cover off. I'm gonna clean this up with a gasket scraper, and I ended up getting it off by just using a gasket scraper and sort of getting it under the gasket and hitting it with a little mallet very lightly. You definitely don't want to damage this impeller at all, and so you don't want to hit your hit whatever you're using to pry it too hard and risk damaging the impeller. Also, there was a little pin right here, so I would avoid trying to pry it from this point right here so that you don't damage this pin. But yeah, I'm gonna clean up this surface, I'll clean up the cover surface, and then we will get on to removing this nut, removing the impeller, and getting our seals out. Okay, I got both surfaces clean here. Just a couple other notes. There was another pin right here that I missed. So watch out if you're prying from there or there. And then when you're cleaning the surface, just make sure not to scratch it too much. I think I scratched this one a decent amount, but Nothing too deep. I think that's okay, but obviously don't trust my advice completely. I'm not a certified mechanic, but I think we're about good to take this nut off and get our impeller off. Also, when I was cleaning the surfaces, I made sure to move this hose that was still leaking a little bit over, and then move my basin over so that I didn't get any gasket material down in my clean coolant. So I think this is a 10 mil. I'm gonna take this nut off, and then we can unscrew the impeller. And just be careful, because this shaft right here, I think it is brittle. Like if you over torque this nut when you're putting everything back on, it can shear off. So I'm just going to be very gentle with this. Maybe I'll use WD-40 if I really need to. It does look like there's a tiny bit of rust, but I'm going to get a 10 mil, I'm going to take that off, and we'll unscrew our impeller, and then we'll see what's underneath. Okay, that's my nut off, and there was a washer behind it. Don't lose that. I did need a tiny bit of WD-40, and I did put the bike in first gear, because this will ultimately turn the whole motor if you let it. It's connected directly to the piston, so just waiting for that siren to pass. It is ultimately connected to the piston, so I just put my bike in first gear so that it wouldn't spin the motor back when I was turning it to the left. So got that off, and now we can unscrew the impeller. All right, there it is. And it wasn't threaded in there, it's just held in with an O-ring. So unscrewing it just makes it a little easier to pull out. And then there is this shim behind it, and you very much do not want to lose this. So keep an eye on this when you're pulling it off, and then set it off in a safe place. But yeah, we've got a seal in there. Then we've got our mechanical seal right here. And then we've got our oil seal behind that. So let's put this shim away. I'll pry the seal out of here, I think. Although you very much do not want to damage the surface of this. Be very gentle with it. And then I'm gonna watch that video again and see how they get all of this out. Okay, so this first seal just pulls out easily. It's got a spring in it. Then that is our mechanical seal right there. And what we're gonna be doing with this is I'm going to take a little narrow punch, and I'm going to take a hammer, and I'm going to try to punch the inside of this. So let me point it out for you. I'm going to try to punch the inside of this right here on this surface. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to deform it so that I can get this little screwdriver or whatever else on the outside of this ring and pull it out. And I'm not really worried about damaging this because there's a rubber oil seal behind it, and that's pretty much it. The guy in the video did say that it's okay to scratch this area a little bit, but yeah, just gonna be punching the inside of this, trying to deform this metal seal right here, and then pulling it out. Okay, and I'm in the direct sun now, so this isn't the most comfortable, but it does give me good lighting. As you can see, I really ripped up the inside of that thing, and I think that's just how you're supposed to do it. I was hammering it on it for a while until I got this hole right here with this larger flathead screwdriver, and then I was really just prying and prying until I was able to get a little lip on the outside of this mechanical seal right here, and then I could get under it with this much smaller, narrower flathead screwdriver, and I could just bend that out. It's a very soft metal. I bent it out, and then I was just able to go around the whole thing until now I can pretty much just take it off. Look at that. So yeah, as you can see, that is all gunked up in there, but not a problem. We will just take that oil seal out, and then we'll be ready to put our new ones in. And yeah, I'm gonna give that a good cleaning because that is crazy gunked up and dirty in there. Okay, we got that other seal out, the oil seal, and it did take some digging. I really mangled that one up, but it's not too bad. I'm just gonna have to clean out that hole very thoroughly, and then I'm gonna clean the whole surface, and then we'll be able to get our new seals in. Okay, so I noticed a little problem, and I'm pretty sure that I just caused it with what I was doing. But if you see in here, there is a little piece of metal that is loose, and it appears to be the innermost rim of this little bore right here. And I don't know how clear it's showing up in the video, but it's pretty much half of the rim, the innermost rim, sort of punched off. And I'm pretty sure I did it when I was hammering on that screwdriver trying to get the mechanical seal off. So be careful when you're doing that if you do choose to do it. That is, I'm assuming, a very bad problem. And I'm assuming I'm going to need to take my clutch cover off and at the least JB weld that back into place, and at the most get a new clutch cover, which I don't want to do quite yet. So I'm thinking I'm going to drain the oil and get my clutch cover off, and then JB weld that little piece back into place. So this turned into a much longer job with that. So yeah, there's a chance that it was like that before. I doubt it, but yeah, I don't want to risk putting everything back together and have that be a problem. So yeah, I'm gonna get all this off. Let's do it. Okay, so I've gotten all of my screws out. I also took my clutch cable off. I did that by removing the lever first. Lever sitting down there, and then I was able to give this some slack to remove the little pin through this hole right here, and then I could get the cable out right there. So that's out. Then we add screws, one there, boom, one down there, one over there, that one. There was a long one right here. There, and back to the start. And I think they were all the same size other than that long one. So I think at this point I am about ready to get this cover off. And there we have it. This is the first time I've ever had the clutch cover off of this bike. Very interesting. I also forgot to mention, you want to make sure that your oil pan is underneath this to catch any oil when you do take this off. And then we've got a dowel right there, and got one right there, but it is in my cover. And those appear to be the only two dowels. So I'm going to have a look around and see if I can find that little metal piece, because it dropped down in here. All right, there it is. It came out with my oil, so it was in my oil pan. But yeah, look at that. That came off of right there. So got a little JB weld. I think before I do anything, I'm gonna go through here and just sort of clean everything up. I'll clean the gasket off of this one, and yeah, then I also do want to check this little filter thing here and clean that off. But then I think I'll be good to go with the JB weld. Okay, so I am inside now. It's a couple days later. I ended up taking my clutch cover off completely. I forget exactly what I showed in the last shot, but I took some JB Weld and I stuck this piece back on here. It's not totally even, so I ended up sanding it down a decent amount. And now it's relatively flat. I think it's flat enough to work all right. But I also ended up gouging the inside of this a little bit. Not sure if you're able to see it, but I filled this in with a little bit of JB Weld as well, just to even out the surface. And now there is a decent lip right down here, that lip down there, but there's a tiny bit of JB Weld just on the outside of it, making it not totally flat. So I'm not sure how well that's going to work. If it doesn't end up working and I noticed that some oil is leaking out the weep hole in the future here, because that's the seal that it would affect, then I'm just going to end up buying a new clutch cover, and that's not very expensive. I think it's about 50 bucks, which was essentially the price of this rebuild kit here. But yeah, so I've got that taken care of. Just a drinking glass right there. But yeah, so got that taken care of, and so here I've got all my pieces. I've got my old impeller. I ended up taking that seal out of here. It was relatively easy. So this is the new seal for this. I got a little tiny screwdriver underneath this white part and was able to pry it out, and then I could just take the rubber part out second. And then there was a little O-ring in there, and I just took a straight pick, one of these, and I was able to dig it out of there. No damage on it, thankfully. So I've also got my water pump, got the surface nice and clean. Water pump gasket, all my seals. This is the mechanical seal here. This is the crush washer for the bottom of the water pump after it's all back together. This is the oil filter, or oil screen that goes on the clutch cover. So we got it all here. I think I'm gonna put it together inside. I'll probably start with this seal and the O-ring, get it in my impeller, and then we will put these, the oil seal and the coolant seal, into our clutch cover, and we'll see if it all fits in there nicely. And then yeah, I think it'll be time to put the gasket on, get our water pump on, and then yeah, we've got our clutch cover gasket and this oil screen to put on there next, and then we can get it all on the bike, get our coolant in, get our oil in, and I think that will be about that. Okay, using the instructions that Eagle Mike provided me with, I got this oil seal in here, and it took a little bit of hammering. It's lined up flush on the other side with the little lip that I repaired, so you want to get it flush with that. And as you can see, there's this little lip around here that's visible, and it's just about lined up with that all the way around. And then I put a little bit of grease in the middle. So next, I'm going to put this mechanical seal in with this spring. And this piece right here is like a graphite type of thing, so it's very brittle, so you don't want to hit it when you're hammering this in. And this 22 mil deep well 12 pointed socket is the perfect tool to do that. It fits right over that graphite piece, and it just sits perfectly on that little lip. And so I'm going to take my rubber mallet and I'm just going to hit that in, and ultimately it's going to sit flush with this little lip right here. See this? It's like Yeah, it's gonna sit flush with that lip right there. So it's gonna go right in, and then there will be a small space between this oil seal and this coolant seal. And then I think I'm gonna be ready to put everything back on the bike. I got that O-ring inside the impeller and this seal right here inside the impeller. The O-ring wasn't too difficult to get in there. I just used a small screwdriver to push it a little bit. And yeah, so I think we're about done. And yeah, before I go and put my gasket on here, I'm gonna need to put it on the bike so that I can get the impeller onto the shaft and the little nut onto the impeller. So yeah, let's keep going. I'm gonna throw this thing on there. Okay, we are back outside now, back with my good old bike, and I've cleaned up the surface, the clutch cover surface for the new gasket. Got my mechanical seal all the way hammered in, and yeah, I think we're good to throw this gasket on the clutch cover surface, get it torqued down. I think it gets torqued down to 70. Each of the bolts, they get torqued down to 72 inch-pounds. Make sure you've got an inch-pound torque wrench. And then, yeah, I think we'll go from there. I'll go one step at a time here. So first up, I've got my 2 dowels, one here, one there. Got those put in. I'm gonna take this oil screen and I'm gonna put it behind the gasket right here. So I'm gonna lift this up and throw it back in there. Now before I go and put this on, I'm just doing a once over, making sure it's clean of any metal shavings or gasket pieces. It does seem to be pretty good. So I'm gonna get this on there, get all the bolts in, and tighten down hand tight, and then we'll get them torqued down. Also, before I put the cover on, I just made sure to grease up this counter shaft. And now we're about ready. Okay, I've got the clutch cover on, and just a note, I had to turn my clutch lever out so that it would fit on to the clutch. There's a little puller thing, and then I could swing the clutch lever around, and now it's sort of locked in place. So now let's get all those bolts on. Remember, I think the long one goes right here. All right, we got all our bolts torqued down to 72 inch-pounds. Now we can get this impeller on, and just to remind you, we replaced this O-ring in here. It's easy to miss. So to do this, we're just gonna rotate this clockwise, I think, or counterclockwise. I'm gonna go double check. All right, I'm happy I double checked because I almost missed these washers. So first, this thin washer, this was the old one. This one came in Eagle Mike's packet. This one's going onto the shaft, just like that. Then we're taking our impeller, and it is going on clockwise. So we'll just slowly do this and make sure not to damage that O-ring as we put it on the threads. Okay. Excuse me. And I think it's against that spring now, that spring and the mechanical seal. So I think that's it. And we've got a little bit of thread poking out, and so we're gonna throw this larger washer on right there. And then finally, we've got this nut. And the written instructions that I'm following say to torque this down to 82 inch-pounds, excuse me, not foot-pounds, 82 inch-pounds. But the video guide that I was watching said that in neutral, you pretty much just tighten this down until it starts to turn the engine. So I'm gonna put my bike in neutral. I think it's still in first from earlier. I put it in neutral and I'm gonna tighten it down there, and I'll see if that meets that 82 inch-pound requirement. So let's do that real quick. All right, yeah, I was just tightening it down and I was turning it over, and I heard a little bit of movement of all the changing things inside that told me that the engine was starting to move over. It sort of went like as soon as I like started to turn it. So I think that is about tight enough. It did not register on my torque wrench, and I mistakenly said 83. The guide that I'm reading said to do it to 87 foot-pound or inch-pound something. Excuse me. But I followed the video instructions and just tightened it until the piston started to move over. So this may be a mistake. I don't think it is going to be. I think that's fine. So yeah, we're good on that, and I think we're good to get this gasket on this surface and get our water pump cover torqued back down. And the torque for these bolts is 72 as well. All right, we got all three of these torqued down to 72. And finally, I think we're getting our drain bolts back in. And I think earlier in the video I mentioned that that smaller washer was supposed to be the crush washer. I was mistaken on that. It was a shim that goes between the impeller and the mechanical seal, as you guys saw earlier. So just going to use one of my own crush washers here. This was the old one that I was using, but I got it in an Amazon package. I'll link that below. So I'm going to throw that back in here and then get our hoses back on, and then I think we'll be about done. We'll be ready to get our fluids back in. All right, I got my hoses installed and tightened down. Just a note, this one that says sill obviously goes to the cylinder, and so that one comes right up around there, and then this one coming from the radiator sort of bends around it and goes to this little notch right there. I also got my rear brake back on. I took it off to get this clutch cover off, got it hooked up to my switch up there. And I also got my clutch cable in, tightened. The way that I like to do this is I like to take all the play out of the lever on this side first, and then go up to the clutch and adjust it up there second. So I think we are about good to add our liquids back. Putting the oil through here and our coolant up through the radiator and our reservoir. I'm going to take this cover off. I think it's just 2 Phillips heads, and then there is a little cap that you can add it through there, and you want to get it right in the middle of this area right here. Okay, I think we are almost done. Got my oil back in, got the drain pulp back in with a new crush washer, got our run over tank filled up with coolant right underneath this high level, and I filled my radiator up to the fill point. Now I'm gonna run my bike for a little while, turn it off and let it cool down, and then check the radiator again to make sure that I don't need to top it off at all. Whew. Long job. And by the way, it took about 1.5 quarts of coolant. So let's turn it on and see how she goes. Okay, I just got her up to operating temp, and she did great. I could take the choke off almost instantly, and I don't think I might have even needed it, and that has never been the case with this bike. Since I got it, even if it was really hot out, I would need to have the choke on at least a little bit until it got somewhat warm, so that's a very good sign. So yeah, I'm gonna let this cool down. Going to check the radiator cap again over there and see if I need to top it off at all. and then I'm gonna take it on a test ride and I will let you guys know how it goes.